So welcome to the Seraphine podcast. I am Seraphine Arocha, and per usual, Chunk and Ace are somewhere around out of the sight line. You won't see them, but maybe you will see them because they make a little pop-up. So if you hear snorts or whatever, it's because I can't live without my dogs. But today we have a really beautiful light of a human being, Terran Smith. So hello.
So happy to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. It's so crazy. My mother's maiden name is Smith.
Really?
And, we were talking earlier before the podcast, coffee clutching. She did, what was it? What was the genealogy test that you did?
23andMe.
23andMe. Mm-hmm. I've always wanted to do it.
You should. It's easy. They just swab your cheek.
That is so cool. And she found out she's got a little bit of the Persian, like I have, a little bit of Indian, which was so cool. And it was so cool to have a little bit of that conversation of when you're identifying with things subconsciously that maybe you don't look the part of it, but it's like, because if you see you with your big blue eyes and your brown hair, maybe you'd be like, Terran, maybe she's Irish, Scottish, yeah,
that's like
totally.
65%.
But it's so crazy because you're so attracted to so many different things. So I'm gonna pass the mic over to you. And I'd just like you to give the listeners just a little background of your story. And also, Terran is a huge advocate. If you go to her Instagram and social media, advocating for mental wellness. I don't like using mental illness. Dr. Daniel Amen is one of my favorite people to follow online, and he has really retrained my brain to talk about mental wellness instead of mental illness.
Absolutely.
So please share your story with the viewers and talk about a lot about why you're so passionate about mental wellness.
All right. So I am a KC native. I was born in Merriam, spent some time in Shawnee, and then since I was 12, my dad, and I live with him now, and I have lived in Lenexa, other than the 5 years that I went to the University of Kansas, the William Allen White School of Journalism, News and Information there. So I graduated in 2015. I am a former DJ and morning news anchor for 3 different stations in the Lawrence and KC area. And I now work full-time as a master level personal trainer, nutritionist, and yoga teacher. The company that I'm with right now, I'm currently on furlough from because, COVID, we're all aware of that happening. Yeah. But the reason why I'm so passionate about mental health and mental wellness is because I come from a family, my mom's side, where I get that Persian, that Sicilian side from, where mental health and abuse has really run rampant for generations. And my mom, when I was growing up, had a lot of psychological problems, a lot of prescription drug use, Munchausen making herself sick, Munchausen by proxy making others sick, a lot of brainwashing, a lot of trauma just involved there, personality disorders, bipolar, all sorts of things. And it really took me up until about 7 years ago before I got to the point where I was tired of hitting rock bottom after rock bottom. My first suicide attempt happened when I was 10 because I was prescribed medications that she had doctors prescribe me, antidepressants when I didn't need them, all sorts of things. And my diagnosis I've had PTSD since I was 7, but I was diagnosed about 10 to 12 years ago with it. And really, actually, PTSD isn't a mental health disorder. It's a it's a physiological injury of the brain.
Yeah, it's a reaction.
Yeah. And it can result in mental illness, mental health issues, and it often does. But I finally just got to that point where I was tired of hitting rock bottom, like I said, and at the time I was still in radio, and I quit my job and I moved back in with my father, and I got out of the last really toxic relationship that I was in. And I decided to delve into health and fitness. And my first certification was in Zumba, Bob I Loud.
Yeah.
And then, I have 2 personal training certifications, ACE and NASM, ACE group fitness, and aqua aerobics instructing certification, precision nutrition level 1 nutritionist, and lifetime yoga teacher training 200 hour. So I was doing that for more than a year full time before all the COVID stuff happened, and I will potentially go back with the company whenever they have the whole group of us back. But that is kind of me in a nutshell. I'm 27. I am a Scorpio. I'm very into astrology. And I have a little service dog. Her name is Fiona. She's kind of like Chunk. She's a Chorky, half Chihuahua, half Yorkie.
They are the best, aren't they? They are. It's so funny. I always laugh because on the worst days, I can come home and their little faces just pop right up and I just feel loved. It's just, it's amazing to me. It really is unconditional love. And they teach me every day about, I don't know, just how to be a better freaking person and a bounce back, you know? Well, it's interesting because, you know, the listeners, you know, and viewers, I think the thing that's so interesting is the guests that I bring on the show are kind of all over, I mean, the place. Like but the one thing they have in common is that they have had some darkness in their life, but they find this light, and the light is within themselves, which is, to me, there's actually a Rumi quote I really love that is basically like when you're in the dark and you're looking around and you don't know where the light is, and literally there's this moment where it dawns on you that you're like, oh shit, I'm the light. I am my own light. So when you went through just experiencing firsthand a mother figure in your life, observing her mental illness, take me through when you were a child to high school to where you finally started to find the light within yourself to start to heal.
Okay. So my mom started to spiral downward shortly after I was born, probably when I was around 2 to 3, was when she first started getting prescribed to things. And she first started having surgeries that she didn't necessarily need, and first started really just spending all of her time in the home, in her bedroom, and started to just manipulate. So we were talking earlier before this, and I mentioned, you know, that my sister, who is okay now and has been in remission for like 10 years, she had cancer whenever I was in college. And during that 2 to 3 year battle, she didn't speak to her once. And my parents got divorced when I was about 9. So up before that, I mean, it was constantly something. Nothing could be peaceful. There always had to be, we need to go to this doctor's appointment. We need to go to that doctor's appointment. You have this. Your father's doing that. All these crazy just ideas about things, and, you know, bead boxes full of prescription drugs, and just getting more and more and more of them constantly, washing out her sinuses with like saline, and like getting a nose job, getting braces when her teeth were already straight, just all this weird stuff. My memory starts really early. I started speaking when I was like 9 months old. So I remember my mom just deteriorating. And once my parents got divorced around I was like age 9, you would have thought that it stopped there, but it didn't. People who have Munchausen and Munchausen by proxy, they have this desire to keep the people around them not just stagnant, but specifically their children. They want to keep them small, like 5. And so I couldn't ever try. She wouldn't let me do anything independently. She would, you know, every season we had to try on all of our clothes, and she would like pinch and prod you and be like, and it was like you're like a human doll, but a doll that's never good enough, and a doll that has to stay the same, but you can't because you're trying to grow as a person. And so there was just so much stress on my family. There's a lot of brainwashing involved and a lot of psychological trauma involved with that, like trying to turn people against each other. I also mentioned she ruined the relationship between my sister and her birth father for like at least 10 years, and had my sister lie about him raping her when he didn't. She almost ruined the relationship, but didn't, with my grandmother and myself, my dad's mom, trying to, I don't know, blame their divorce on her. And so after their divorce, she moves out and things like that. She disappeared for a couple of years, went to Union, Missouri, and then my nervous system started to recover. My sister graduated and went to K-State. My dad and I moved to Lenexa in the house that he's still in now. And then all of a sudden she comes back, it's the real me. I'm fine now. Everything's good. I knew that wasn't the case, even though, wanting to hope that, always wanting to have a mother figure to look up to. And then she started fighting for custody of me again. I had to go to so many therapists and constantly had social workers at our front door saying that I had eating disorders and was being neglected because my dad would travel for work and his mom would come and watch me, and just constantly on guard. And so it was in the middle of high school that I started seeing the psychiatrist I still see now. But at the time I was so I was in the IB program and I skipped second grade. So I was trying to get into the best journalism school in the country, and dang it, I did.
Yeah.
But it took me a while to realize that the type of healing that I was doing, which was basically just taking a lot of benzos that were prescribed me, taking a lot of Adderall and things like that, it was only compounding on everything. It wasn't, and it takes a while before we learn about the nervous system, being able to rewire all of that response in your peripheral nervous system and all of that stuff. And so it wasn't until I think I've also mentioned with you that I've had a lot of suicide attempts, and my last one was probably between 2014 and 2016 when I was working in radio, and I just got so tired of experiencing that over and over. And I had that moment that you talked about it's just it's almost like you see God.
Yeah.
And it's just you hear this voice of reason that's you deserve to help yourself so that you can live your purpose, which is to help others. I always say help yourself first so that you can help others. And it was shortly after that I quit that job in radio, although I still absolutely love broadcast and radio and voiceover, and decided to say, you know what, I'm going to stop trying to fix the mental part of it, and I'm just going to work on not overprescribing, not drinking heavily, not living an unhealthy lifestyle, and focus on just living healthy and taking care of my physical body and working out and getting all of my physical self right, and see if my brain follows. And I just was really passionate about it. And I also felt the journalism industry was very, very toxic.
Yeah.
Especially with my particular views. I couldn't say anything that I believed. And even if I could say things that I believed on their narrative, you have to just push a certain narrative. So I got that first certification in Zumba, and I was like, oh, I like this. Got a whole bunch of other certifications, and kind of the rest is history. I've had some lapses since then. Just in about a year ago, when my first service animal, Tootsie, passed away, I had an experience where I came across a woman who was traumatized at this music festival, and it took my brain back to that place of trauma. And I remembered a few more things that I had suppressed, but I took 7 weeks off work, and I did some intensive outpatient treatment for my mental health. And I really am at the best place that I've ever been in my life, and I just feel so secure and relieved. When I go to bed at night, I just feel such relief and comfort just knowing that I have my own back, and that I've just learned so much about the human mind. My minor was in psych, but I've learned so much through my experience and the ability that I have on the platforms that I have through social media to directly affect people and help them grow and change and help them realize that they have the power to do that. That makes absolutely everything that I've experienced 100% worth it, because everything happens the way that it's supposed to.
Oh, I totally agree with you. You give me goosebumps, actually, because I don't know, I think we met, 2 years ago or a year ago?
When I was going through my yoga teacher training.
Yeah.
2018.
Yeah, 2018. Yeah. And it's so interesting because I remember sitting down with you, and I had just started to dive into Dr. Daniel Amen's work, and what you just described of getting your health of your body right is completely his philosophy. I myself was diagnosed 2.5 years ago. 2 years ago with ADHD severe.
Me too.
Right? And then you sit there and you're like, oh my God, my whole schooling as a kid, if only it would have been a lot easier for me. But I think the thing that's hard is when you go in to speak to a therapist. I went to both psychologist and psychiatrist. So one is where you lay on the couch and you talk. The other one you sit and talk, but they prescribe you medication. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that Dr. Amen says is they treat the symptoms. It's the only thing in medical science where you go in, you tell them what you feel, they write you a prescription, but they never look inside your head. They never see unless you get a brain scan.
Yeah, I wanted to do that.
I do too. And the Amen clinics actually do that, and I'm dying to do it. He's actually Justin Bieber's doctor, and he's kind of gone through the ups and downs.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the way that you describe the Adderall and Xanax, because that's usually what they prescribe.
It does not help your nervous system.
Well, and the other thing is that it does it like what it can do, especially with alcohol, and if you have outside stresses. So even if you are living your best life, right? I mean, like you're going to the gym, you're making good decisions, and maybe you have a few friends that go through something, or you're in a relationship that is going through difficulty. These are outside stressors, right? And that has a huge impact on how your body reacts when you're on the medication. Then on top of it, if you're on any medication ever, right? So, if you're smoking a little bit of weed with Adderall or Xanax, it completely changes your brain. And then with alcohol, it's like putting in this toxic chemical that
combination.
It is. And then even if you're slightly depressed, you can go down the darkest path.
Absolutely.
You can think about suicide. You can convince yourself of things that on a good day, when everything just, the chemicals are all right. And that's the other thing about drugs in general, is that there's no perfect dose, and you never know when your body is going to respond to it. And then you're getting older, and then you're digesting different, and then sometimes immune stuff comes up. At the end of the day, when I talked to you 2 years ago, it was the first time I was getting on medication myself. And I was scared. I was so scared because I had thought forever that I was just kind of this like flaky, kind of like forgetful, highly energetic person. But then I felt things so deeply, and the empath in me, right?
Yeah.
And it was so nice to sit across from you, and
I so get that.
And just feeling like, oh my God, thank God. Like I'm not alone in this. And again, I was 41, and you were like 26 at the time, or whatever it was. Yeah. And just this moment of like learning from each other and being like, oh my gosh, this is scary. And I remember at the time you had like been completely clean off your medication. And then we both had this conversation of like, do we get back on it?
Yeah.
And and there it is. It's like a little dance.
It's a balance. It's a give and take. And I'm on medication for ADHD, for Vyvanse, and happily. Yeah. Like it's interesting how you can take a medication and have it be so unhealthy, and take some time away from it. Because medication has its place, most definitely. Yeah. But it is all about your relationship with yourself first and foremost, and how in tune you are with things externally and internally. Absolutely. Because now I like to drink, but it's an absolutely different relationship than I ever had before. And your answer is going to be unique to you, like a fingerprint. But the thing that makes it different than a fingerprint is that it's going to change.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's an interesting place to navigate it. And I feel like the more that I talk about it, and the more that I feel more comfortable with it, the better I deal with it, and I make better decisions for my body. So when you came out of college, I'd like to talk to you too, because I'm now on this platform, right, of putting this podcast out there, and we've done a lot of talking about putting yourself out there, and then this kind of push and pull of like wanting to have a voice, wanting to have an opinion, and then also realizing the state of the world today, not just with COVID-19, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of feelings and thoughts about how we're handling it. And then all the social upheaval.
Yeah.
And being white women.
Yeah.
And also trying to gracefully navigate having a voice, talking about mental health, because at the end of the day, like, having a voice, you're putting yourself out there.
Yes.
And there will be opinions. Like, I don't like your opinion. And then what do you do to protect yourself? And then playing it too safe. And then, and then you shy away from what you love, which is this forum. Talk to me about how you have changed and evolved as a public persona.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that has taken me years to do. And I personally have gotten to the point where I err on the side of caution. If behind closed doors and things like that, I'm very outward about certain things because I have very strong beliefs. But I learned in getting a degree in news and information and in being on, nationally syndicated shows for a period of time, and then also having my social media platforms, and even just in this past week, losing a friend over, or losing a friendship rather, over, posting something about stopping human trafficking. It's gotten to the point where I think that people can do more good, at least I feel I can do more good, by putting myself and my voice on a platform that I feel affects the most people at once. Not saying that any platforms that put people into more of a niche are things that people shouldn't do, but I think that if you're going to advocate for something, that it should not cause negative energy in your life. It shouldn't cause you more stress. And at least for me, I know that that's something that I have to take really seriously, because PTSD, it is physiological and it can become very physical. One of the number one symptoms of someone having PTSD is having a lot of physical ailments. Like last fall, I got a cold in September and I was on antibiotics and steroids until almost 2020. And I was going through a lot of stress. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why mental health has become just the main platform that I do. And in college, a lot of my professors would call me a PR flag, because they were like, oh, that nonprofit stuff, you're a feature writer. And I'm like, I mean, not necessarily. There's constantly, things that affect people that are going on that you can write about and make into a harder news story. But the other part of my evolution with my public persona is that I do a lot of creative things. I'm a life path 5 in numerology, and we create or we stagnate. So I have so many creative outlets. I sing and I songwrite, and I've played acoustic guitar since I was like 12. And then I model. I love to dance. I love to do all sorts of different things. And I didn't used to put myself out there as much, specifically with modeling. Even just I don't do nude stuff, but I'll do like boudoir, which is like bedroom photography, and I'll do, swimsuits and things like that. And even just this time last year, I had done shoots that I wouldn't share any of my stuff from. Yeah. And it's just taken me a long time and experiencing a lot of abuse, not just from my mom, but from the numerous individuals that I've experienced sexual assault from, and rapes and abusive relationships. It took me up into this point, and I'm still I'm big cynical of a lot of people when they first come into my space of energy, because I'm looking for red flags. And if I experience a red flag, I have no problem with cutting that energy out of my life, because I spent too much of the first quarter century of my existence having this weight of feeling trapped and feeling heavy in my heart and soul that I refuse to feel that way anymore. And so that's my stance on my public persona, is to affect people positively with as big of a realm that will include the most masses amount of people as I can. For me, I feel like that's health and wellness, and specifically mental health. Yeah.
It's so interesting how as soon as you put yourself out in public, boundaries are so important to place, which is so weird. Mm-hmm. Because on one hand, you're opening yourself up and saying, well, this is who I am. These are the conversations. These are things I'm interested in. And then as soon as you put yourself out there, it's interesting how a lot of people, when they think you're doing well, they don't give you the compliment, or they don't tell you thank you, or they don't, because they already assume that, well, it connected with me, then, everybody, you must be showering them. What's one more compliment? And the funny thing is that we're more prone to criticize and to speak up, I think, because, you know, that's the tougher thing, and I'm telling you like it is. But usually, you know, when you get these comments, it's usually from someone hiding behind their computer, and you don't even see their face. And those are the ones that, no matter how much you say you don't give a fuck, it still gets you. There are days where you don't have body armor on. So like that one thing, and sometimes that one thing, you know, because if you're a person who's about bettering yourself, right? I like to listen, and I like to hear people's opinions, and then I consider it. But then you put in the mental health part of it.
Right, without taking it on.
Totally.
As an empath.
Oh, that's the hardest part. And the other thing is dialing down your voice.
Yes.
Dialing down your you know, when you feel like there was all these ad campaigns through the years of like mouths being covered, you know, like silence yourself. I won't be silenced. And, you know, the tape over the mouth. And it's interesting how we're in a world now that's demanding us to have an opinion.
Right.
Black Lives Matter. And I'm learning just how to say that without someone criticizing me for it.
Right.
And I'm like, whoa, and how I say it and the verbiage I use and it's
while also being authentic.
And I'm being authentic and also and fucking up, you know, in front of people and being like, oh God, I could have said it this way. Or like even the party I was talking to Aaron the other day about the party I'm throwing, a white party, because it literally is beautiful at night to have lights reflected on it.
The color white is all colors.
Totally. Right? Thank you.
My favorite color is rainbow, so I get it.
So, you know, I love that you just said that, because, you know, I was thinking the other day before you were coming into this conversation, I had just watched a friend of mine, Kara Q, who her father was a school shooter. And and she speaks publicly about this. And she was giving kind of an education platform on how do we navigate like our feelings in this crazy time, and how do we speak freely, and how do we use our voices. And she was talking about how everybody is so fixated on us all being the same and coming together and being on the same page, right? Yeah. And she gave this beautiful metaphor about mosaics and how mosaics are literally shattered pieces of things that are held together in glue. And this time is about listening to people's stories and understanding that listening is the key, because it's in the knowing and hearing people's stories that is the glue that keeps us like empathic, sympathetic, like wanting to be a part of each other, because Absolutely. It's in that understanding. And it's so beautiful to watch you as a young woman who is beautiful, intelligent, sexy, loving, and the way you speak about your pain is you don't sit and sink in it.
Not anymore.
No, you really have. When I say you've rised above it, I really feel that each time I speak with you and see a post, it feels like you are really fleshing out this incredible woman.
Thank you.
What are you hoping? What are you looking forward to? Coming out of COVID and all of this change, like what's your hope for yourself and other people?
My hope for myself is to continue to. I used to think, they say like it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill, and perhaps that's true, but I have a lot of skills and I have a lot of hobbies and I have a lot of interests, and for whatever reason, I used to not pursue all those different avenues, and now really in the past few years, I've gotten to the point where I spend time doing all of the things that I love. And so I hope to continue to be able to create multiple avenues of income, which I've already begun doing. And I hope to be able to really just create a career for myself that is a conglomeration of all of the things that I hold dear to myself, and that all of the things that the world deserves to see from me because I'm talented in. And so I happily right now, I live with my dad. He's my best friend. And part of it is financial. Part of it is what's happening in the state of the world. Part of it is because he's truly my best friend, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But eventually I do want to get my own place, but I want it to be at a point that's a right place for me. I see it's sappy, but I am looking forward to like finding a partner in life. And I have really like traditional views for myself personally as far as like the family that I'd like to create. And I'd like to get to a point where some of my beliefs are a little bit more publicly known. But at this point, I feel like certain beliefs that I have, if I were to say them, would just so polarize me that it wouldn't be fair to the work that I've done so far. So I just want to keep on being authentic, keep on pursuing all of those avenues, and just like you said, like keep on fleshing out, just see how much I can grow specifically in this market, because I love Kansas City, and then potentially take that skill set somewhere like Vegas, somewhere like I have so much family in California, somewhere like New York. I don't know where it's going to be, but when it does happen, it will be right. I want to be like, keep on growing like a fish in this pond until I'm like the big catfish in the Missouri River.
Yeah.
Bam. And then be like, okay, well, maybe now it's time to go somewhere else.
What do you feed your soul with on the daily? Like whether it be music, whether it be popping on a podcast, whether it be someone's a fellow social media person, like where do you draw? And then also talk to me also about your belief system, because I think I love to dive into that too spiritually.
Okay. So I play guitar a lot. I like to do a lot of finger picking and chord progressions, and I write music. If I were to categorize the music that I write, it's like indie pop, indie acoustic folk type stuff. So I play a lot of Halsey. I play a lot of Lady Gaga. I play a lot of Rainbow Kitten Surprise. I just like to play and sing music that just really makes me feel. Mm-hmm. I'm a very passionate, very emotional person. Mm-hmm. Though I don't cry a lot, but I'm just always feeling so much. I just like to create things. Sometimes I'll do, photo shoots for Instagram, whether I do them with myself, by myself, for myself, or if I collaborate with local businesses. I like to take myself to fun local businesses. Like last Sunday I went and just spent the day with myself at City Market, got a bunch of bubble teas. I still have one in my freezer that I might have later today. This past summer though, because of COVID and because of my time off from my full-time job, I've just had so much opportunity to go to Perry Lake. Yeah. And before the summer I hadn't been at the lake for 10 years. I don't know how that happened. I guess I just wasn't friends with anyone who was there. And so that's just been, I love water. I love being outside. I love nature. And then as far as my beliefs, so when I was growing up, I've known about God before anyone ever told me about it. I remember when I was 3 and I used to pray and no one ever told me about it. My parents said I had this weird phase when I was 2 or 3 where all of a sudden I became obsessed with death for a year, and I was just constantly talking about death. Yeah. But when I was 6 or 7 and I lived in Shawnee, I just really went through this movement spiritually, and I started going to church 2 or 3 times a week, a Christian church. At the time it was called Full Faith Church of Love, Maranatha Academy. And we'd go with my neighbors because neither of my parents are really religious. And I did that for years until around age 12 when we moved to Lenexa. I started going to a Baptist church, and there's just a lot of there was a lot of pain within that specific church realm and the groups of people there, a lot of abuse in that as well. Mm-hmm. And I had an experience where they brought me up at the front, and one of my friends, you know how middle school girls can be, they're just the worst.
Nightmare.
Yeah.
Did anyone really like middle school? And if you did,
I loved it.
I bet you're not the best person right now growing up in life.
And so they basically tried to almost exorcise me, and I left. So I didn't stop believing in Jesus in that moment, but I stopped going to church for some time. And then in college, when I found out my first week at college that my sister had stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma leukemia. And like I said, she is okay now, has been in remission for like 7 or 8 years, got married last year.
I love that.
When I found out that she was sick, I was wearing a necklace that I got from It's a Beautiful Day in Westport, and I'd had it on for like a year. And I realized I just like fell to my knees, and for whatever reason, I clutched it. And then I was like, I'm going to look up what this God means. And it was Sri Ganesh, the Hindu god for destroying your fears and overcoming your obstacles. So I was like, well, if that doesn't mean something, nothing does. So I worked on the tattoo I have along my right side rib cage for about the length of time my sister was in treatment. And I started loosely practicing Hinduism then and got more serious with it, more into it. I go to the temple sometimes now. I pray to like, there's like 3 million gods in Hinduism, and I pray to like 6 of them. And it took me until like probably 2 years ago before I really became accepting and okay with myself of believing in Jesus and believing in Hinduism and being open about talking about that with people and being okay with some people not thinking that that's okay and being okay with other people thinking that that's great. And that's kind of how I feel about my other belief system, you know, politics and social things, because I'm LGBTQ, but because I have very traditional beliefs when it comes to my personal family life and just the fact that I'm a conglomeration of a lot of different things, kind of like my nationalities. Like I am a bunch of different stuff in one, just like our country is, this melting pot. And, you know, I make for a pretty delicious fondue, I think.
You really, really do.
Thank you.
Mean, to a point to where, I'm just glad that, like I said, I'm so glad that we became synergistic with each other.
Me too.
Because I do feel like, you know, the age differences, and if your paths combined, if they don't, like, it's so easy to just get caught up in a little box of like your friends and your people. And even now, people aren't leaving their homes that much, and
not me.
And you and I love you
I'm
because
out.
you. And the other thing is, you also are so good about reaching out and connecting, and that makes me so happy, because again, you end up getting, you play it safe, you know. And I do like the reminder that you and I are kind of gently reminding each other of, like, you know, we want to be respectful. We're playing it safe, but it's pretty incredible feeling of like when you find your voice and you can say things loud and proud and unapologetically
Without wavering.
Totally.
Be authentic first.
So before we wrap up, because I can talk to you forever and I don't want it to end, I also would like you to speak a little bit, because I'm new to the social media, Instagram game.
You have a TikTok yet?
Oh God, I have one, but I haven't made one. Because I'm scared. And the other thing is that my brain, like Aaron, my producer, who's sitting behind the camera, he literally has to explain things to me like 5 times. And with the ADHD, I'm like, I got it. And then I'm asking him to redo it again.
What did you say?
And he's like, plug this into that. Hit record. And I'm like, fuck. And then the worst is my logging in with how many different code words. And God, he just laughs at me. So how do you do that? I realize I just have to get my brain checked every few weeks, which I do. But how did you learn? Because you have how many followers on Instagram?
You know, like 33,000.
That's impressive. I mean, again, when you think about and how hard it is. Like right now I'm laughing, like my podcast is up to 80 followers and my personal Instagram, like, and I'm learning, but what are things that you have had to remind yourself of? And then what are suggestions for broadening your platform? And then also talk to me about like sponsorship too, because I think a lot of people don't understand it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the best advice that I can give, especially when starting a platform, is like, of course, be patient and realize that it's not going to happen overnight. Be consistent, but also at the same time realize that you're not conflating yourself and you're not being inauthentic if you do promotions, which is like paid advertisements through Instagram or through Facebook, right? Because they're both owned by the same company. Be mindful of, you know, as we've talked about, putting your belief system out there, because if it's not the right beliefs for whoever's running the social media platform at the time, you can easily end up being not necessarily shadow banned, but you kind of essentially shadow banned, which is where the content that you're producing doesn't get shown to people, even if it should. So my degree, news and information journalism, William Allen White, I definitely learned a lot of what I utilize through there. And I also learned a lot of it from being a DJ for 92.9 The Bull and 105.9 KSFM and 1320 AM KLWN, 90.1 KF. You get the idea. Yeah. A lot of different stations. If you have an Instagram and that's where you're posting the majority of stuff, that's great. But you should also have a Facebook page for it. And you can link those two things. That way it just kind of shares automatically. You should have a Twitter for it as well. I don't personally use Twitter because it's so heavily controlled it's more controlled than almost any other platform. How much you have to conform your beliefs, even if your page isn't political. And then pay attention to the time of day that you post. People say typically 5 p.m. is the best time of day to post, but it depends on the day of the week. Lunchtime is also a good time. 5 a.m., lunchtime, 5 p.m. If you're past 7 p.m., don't post it. If you're like between that, like from noon to 3, from like 1:30 to 3, probably don't post it. Use hashtags. Sometimes, and the thing is, it's like there's all these articles, like especially on Snapchat. It has do you have Snapchat?
No.
You got to get that.
All right, I know.
Because then the more platforms that you have, you're cross-platforming, which makes you way more searchable. You're gonna gain people from Snapchat over to your Instagram, and the same thing, you're gonna gain people from your Instagram over to your Snapchat. I run a Poshmark boutique, which Poshmark is like eBay, but it's more so with clothes and household items and like labels and designers and things like that. And every single package that I send out, I have like a handwritten thank you note, and I put follow me on social media. And with regards to like sponsorship and brand deals, so I have gained a lot of followers, I think, from being a positive influence, like from having a large weight loss story. I am not naturally a heavyset person, but whenever I was at my like lowest point, one of my lowest points, I was like 70 or 80 pounds heavier than I am now. And so people seeing that transformation helped me gain a lot of traction. Being at one point, I was a DJ, morning news anchor, but I was also running the social media. I was a social media manager for all of those stations. So I was running multiple pages that one had 12,000, one had 65,000. So being able to do that and then figure out ways, obviously, to tag myself helped me grow as well. But yeah, there's no shame in like doing paid advertisements. Yeah. Absolutely not. I still do them sometimes. Yeah. And doing them in a smart way that's targeted, and doing them in a way that you do it on multiple platforms. Do one on Facebook and then do one on Instagram. See which one gets more and adjust like the audience that you're trying to reach based on doing that.
Were you approached first about a sponsorship, or did you reach out?
So it depends. So right now I work with, on an ongoing basis, like 6 or 7 brands, and I'm always looking to grow more. And actually like 4 or 5 of those have happened in the past like month and a half or 2.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Very cool.
I've worked with Frey Skincare, which is amazing. You've got to try it, for like a year or 2 now, and I get paid commission. So they reached out to me. And then I'm trying to think of one that one of the ones that I got this past month that I'm very proud of, Quest Nutrition.
Yes.
Huge label. That happened because I posted just like one of their products on my story and tagged them in it. That's the other thing. Use hashtags on your story. Most people don't know to do that, but how else are you going to grow? Yeah. You post so much on your story every 24 hours, right? Yeah. On your page, you might only post 7 in a week. So if you're constantly putting hashtags on your story, which yes, it takes time. Yeah. You're going to get more people seeing your story. You're going to get more people following you. But yeah, they saw my story. They messaged me. Anytime that happens, I almost always, if I like the brand and I support them, will message back and say, like, if you're looking for a brand ambassador or to do sponsorships and things like that, I would love an opportunity to be able to apply. That being said, I don't have I'm a micro influencer. So a macro influencer, someone who has like more than 100,000. Those are typically the people that you're going to have companies pay you to post. I don't get paid to do individual posts yet, but I'm working on getting to that point eventually. And it's weird how growth happens. I think that Instagram is so flooded now that it's really, really tough to get past where you are. I also, though, I've had a lot of experiences where I will take months off at a time. Yeah. So I try not to put too much pressure on myself to get to that 40 or that 50 or whatever, because I'd rather continue to reach out to the people that I have. And also my number one thing with it, which has taken me a long time to get to, is being in a spot where I do it for me, but I do it for me to help me and to help other people. And I don't feel like stress about it. It's something that I get to do consistently. And I now finally know how to create the kind of quality content that I want to without it becoming something that weighs me down, because I am so not for anything that gives you that feeling in your heart and your stomach. I hate that feeling.
No, it's every day you turn on the TV is a trigger for it. Why do I need to have anything in my life I'm welcoming that way?
Yeah.
Right? No. Yeah. Well, God, I don't ever want these to end, but I also know the capacity for people to listen is like, okay, you guys have talked my ear off. I want you back. I want you. I want more time with you, and who knows? I mean, I feel like you're going to be in my life for a while, and I'm so excited to see where you go and how you develop not only your brand but just inside out, because just in the last year, it's like I'm just looking at you and I'm like, wow, I only wish that I had the capacity of openness to evolution at your age that now I'm finally fucking figuring out at 43. So thank you for being like this fun beacon of light. And I love looking at your content, because you put a freaking smile on my face, and you are really authentic. Yeah,
for real.
I love it. Thank you so much. Please tell the viewers where they can follow you, Poshmark, anything.
So you can follow my Instagram at Terran Ray Smith. That's TerranRaesmith. My Snapchat is Hey Terran, with Terran spelled the same way. And my Poshmark is at Raybo Barbie. So I share a lot of my my Poshmark stuff on there. So I won't spell that one out, but yeah.
Well, I am loving it. I'm loving you, and I look forward to much more with you in the future.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Seraphine podcast, and I will see you all hopefully on the flip side. See you later. Bye.